Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. I shall see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today, where we'll be relaxing as per usual. Just got, it's a bank holiday here in the UK, hence the timing of it. But just got done with a D&D session from group. It was a much more low key one because, of course, as I said before, both campaigns synced up pretty well, and they both reached a sort of like a mid-arc finale, mid-arc conclusion with the last session. So I was like, let's have it be a bit more low-key this time. So hello everyone, right now in Fawnhallow it's 5:24 p.m. on Monday, May 6th, 2024. So this group had done like a lot of combat recently, I feel like. Combat and stealthy stuff. So I was just like, okay, this time no combat, no stealth or anything like that. Just pure like dungeon crawling with some puzzles and a lot of lore, I suppose, tied with it as well. Obviously, it's still relevant to the campaign and things they're investigating. How much about those conclusions they can draw themselves, I'm sure, but I'm not going to spoil it, obviously, for them. But it was something which, just like the general idea was, it's going to be more relaxed. Let's come up with some puzzles and see how they solve it. Hopefully it was more fun. Hopefully it was not. I don't know. Not hopefully it was. Hopefully it was not fun. That doesn't make sense. If it was, if it wasn't, I don't necessarily know. But I think it would be a nice change of pace because I feel like all the stuff I've done so far has been very intense. And as with like stories and that sort of thing, you need ups and downs, I suppose, of intense moments and not intense moments, right? It's a real balance, I suppose, getting those high tension moments and those much more casual moments as well, because you need something to balance out to wet for a palate, I suppose. That's I'll talk to Phoebe. Think you're moving on? Absolutely not, Phoebe. You should stick around. Yeah, I mean, like in a story arc, and as well, you would have moments of intensity followed by moments of like quietness and back up to intensity and up and down again, that sort of thing. Because the quiet moments make the intense moments feel more intense, and then the calm, like quiet moments are sort of like a welcome break on the intense moments. If you just go intense all the time, it's overwhelmingly exhausting. I'm sure you played games or like listened to stories or where it's had that the entire time. And it's very much too much. Like the one I always think about, which I always use as an example, is like why I didn't like Overwatch all that much. Well, okay, no, I shouldn't say I didn't like Overwatch all that much. Like I found it fine. I found it was a fun hero shooter for the first like while I played it, and then eventually I got bored of it. But it wasn't bored of it because I was like the gameplay is necessarily boring. But to me, sorry, no, catch myself. Why am I speaking at like a million miles an hour? Slow roll. But for me, Overwatch had a real big problem with the fact that its pacing was so crazily off. Not crazily off, I guess, but it was more that it was too intense all the time. Overwatch, to me, felt like it was almost non-stop combat. Like, at least from what I recall, death timers were relatively short. They weren't, like, extremely short or anything. But presumably they were somewhat short so that you could get back into the action. The only downtime you really had is if you respawned somewhere reasonably far away from where the action was taking place, so you had to take some time to walk there. But that still felt like mild action, I suppose, because you could get like ambushed at any opportunity or sniped or something as you were walking out. I just remember that's my memories of Overwatch, just basically being like it's too much all the time. It was not enough downtime in between things. Where things are like League of Legends, where I'm like, certainly the intense moments can be intense, but there's a lot of downtime in between things where you're like farming waves or just like stuff like that, or death timers are longer, something. I don't necessarily know. It's just the feelings I got from it. They might be completely false, by the way. It's just that's my memory of Overwatch. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a story which was just like too intense all the time. I think I felt that during a Mario movie, like quite a bit, where I felt like, but I'm not sure if it was like too intense all the time. It was just more like its pacing felt like it was too much. Like the Mario movie felt like it was just going like, oh, here's cool thing, here's cool thing, here's cool thing, here's reference, here's cool thing, here's reference, and I was just like, whoa, this is like, you gotta like chill out. you gotta relax. So yeah, I mean that was basically what this sort of dungeon crawling business is. What will we get at the end of it? We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. You know, a nice thing about dungeons is always a nice opportunity to give some magical items out here and there, which can always be a little bit of fun. But yeah, what are we going to talk about? I'm not sure. I mean, I guess we can carry on with that sort of intensity topic. I'm trying to think of a good example of a story which was too intense for too long. I can tell you an example of like almost the opposite case, where it was like I felt like it was too low intensity for too long, kind of. But I remember feeling that with Night in the Woods when I first played it. I don't know if I'd feel it now necessarily. I still recommend Night in the Woods as a great game, as long as you know what you're getting into. Where Night in the Woods is basically it's very low intensity for like a large portion of it, and then there's some like emotionally intense moments like here and there, and then it's not until like 3/4 of the way in you get like into like a proper like intense moment where you're like, whoa, what is going on, sort of thing. If you go in with like the expectation of it being like sort of like slice of lifey, like emotional drama exploration, then I think that's totally fine. But I think it was advertised as like some sort of like weird paranormal, sort of like a weird stuff happens in small town America, which it kind of, you know, does as well. I mean, like mild sort of spoilers for Night in the Woods, but I think it definitely takes its time to get going. And while I loved the humdrum and everydayness, I suppose, of a slice of life, even I got to a point before something major happened. I'm not going to give spoilers. I think it happened during the Halloween night, and I can't remember, where I was just like, wow, I'm surprised like nothing's happened yet, really, except for some like relationship drama, I guess. Which not to say that the relationship drama wasn't intense, I suppose, as well. I think it was fantastic, but it was also like, I'm surprised. I guess because I went into it with the idea like, oh, this is like some sort of I went into the idea that it was kind of like Oxenfree, I suppose, where it had like this weird sort of like paranormal weirdness, strangeness, and mysteries for you to like investigate and solve, which it kind of did for a while, but like not a huge amount. Anyway, the parts I remember is actually not the paranormal mystery part of Night in the Woods as well. I very much remember the drama. The one specific scene, the final scene, not the final scene, but the final. Well, you know, spoilers, I suppose, you get an option to choose between a B scene or a Greg scene. The final one of those choices would be sticks in my mind. It's like such a good scene. Wow. But that one, it was like a really low intensity for a huge portion of that game. What sort of game is like high intensity all the time? I feel like it's certainly a platform which much older games probably fall into, because, you know, game design and philosophies were not quite fully developed, I suppose, at that point. Because it's a thing with a lot of like these NES games, isn't it, where the difficulty is just like ridiculously hard, like constantly throughout. As I understand it, I again never played them, but as I understand it, it's also because a lot of those sort of like arcade games as well were intentionally designed to be difficult, because they want you to keep continuously putting coins or quarters or whatever currency you use in the UK, to be honest. Like, I guess £1, but that sounds insanely expensive. Into the machine to get more plays out of it. That's why like Pac-Man, I suppose, is meant to be like, and Donkey Kong is like not obtrusively difficult, but pretty difficult to start off with, I suppose, if you don't know what you're doing. And you want kids to continuously put in money, and then like the difficulty ramps up and more, so we just keep putting like money into. That's how you fund an arcade, isn't it? Yeah. I can't really think of a story which was like too intense the entire time, such that I had to. I'm trying to think of a game where I was playing it and I was like, I need a break from this game. I need to just like stop playing it for a second. I'm sure there's been some, but I guess Anarchy was kind of like that in a way, which is weird to say, because Anarchy has basically no story. Anarchy was not like story-wise or narratively too intense, but I can't think of a good example that was narratively too intense. But it was very much like the entire gameplay was like non-stop, just like doing things the entire time. And especially like I say it all the time, but I should not have tried to S-rank that game, not because it's a bad game necessarily, but it was like I was not the right audience, I think, to try and S-rank that game. I did it anyway though. But I just remember playing through those levels, and it was basically like 11 to 15 continuous minutes of I can't make a single mistake, otherwise I had to restart the entire level because there goes my S rank, and it was just incredibly exhausting. I remember doing it. I still think Anarchy is a very fun game, but it's not a game that I personally should have tried to S rank. It's a game I should have like played through and been like, all right, that's good. I mean, props to that game. It single-handedly made me sort of like reevaluate, because at that point I think I basically had 100%ed or almost 100%ed all the games I played thus far. Like, I didn't do like the extreme challenges, I think, on Hollow Knight or anything like that, but I basically did my best to see all the content at what a stage it felt achievable. So I don't know, that comes to mind. Wasn't that, you know, this is more like a really random one, but back when we had a writing group, you might be like, oh, the writing group's not going on anymore. It still theoretically exists. This is more like people don't have the time for it anymore. It was slowly sort of like dying out, I suppose, of how many people were like doing like the stories and stuff specifically for it. And now that one of my friends has moved, and now the D&D sessions are happening, it's like I don't have really time to write these stories anymore. So I think it's slowly fizzled out. Maybe at some point it will be revived as well, which would be fantastic. I think it's fun. Writing stories. It's just, again, got to find the time for it. But there's too many things in life that I want to do, and I don't have the time for it, which is just a big old mood, I believe. I mean, I'm recording this right now, and then I immediately need to get ready because I'm going to be doing a pub quiz, which, if you saw yesterday's stream, you would know about that. I did some practice, I suppose, of a pub quiz, or try to, by doing some Proto Bowl Jeopardy. I don't think it honestly would help me in the pub quiz, because I think those questions are much harder than the questions you might see in a regular pub quiz, and not nearly as pop culture focused, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see if we can defend our title or not during a pub quiz. And if we can't, then so be it. That's just life. What's a game that was, let's see, it was probably like a Reddit game that was too intense all the time. No, Reddit games too high, games that are overwhelming. Maybe that's a good way to, too high intensity. High intensity / stressful game needed. Okay. Cuphead. Interesting. I guess so, but I think Cuphead's levels are all quite short. Like the longest level is like King Dice, but even that you get like a breather in between things, right? Most of Cuphead's levels don't take more than a few minutes. Like the longest I think probably takes a couple of minutes. I mean, I could probably just like, let's see. Cuphead average boss level length. No, like yeah. Because to get an S rank, you have to do it faster than 2 minutes. That's like a really short time, but they are very intense. So Cuphead is sort of like sprinting, then you take a break, and sprinting, and you take a break. And I guess a good thing about the fact that Cuphead is an offline game is you can just stop at any point, which, you know, while Overwatch's high intense moments probably did not peak to Cuphead's high intense moments, because it's an online game, once you're in a match, you have to like continuously play, right? You can't just be like, all right, guys, I'm just going to go AFK for a bit because I need a break, I need a breather. Metroid Dread. That's an interesting one. I've not played Metroid Dread, but I've heard it is actually quite a stressful game because, it's any game where you have a sort of like pursuit monster chasing after you and there's nothing that you can feel like you can do to really stop it. It's kind of like the premise of a lot of horror games, but based off, you know, Outlast with that guy, I don't remember his name, and like Pyramid Head, I suppose, in Silent Hill. These enemies which are just like, there's nothing you can really do to stop them. You can only run. Those are meant to be stressful. I mean, like horror games in general are kind of meant to be stressful. It's kind of like the sort of modus operandi with their design, isn't it? So yeah, but that I can certainly see. Thumper. Okay, Thumper I own, I think, but I've never... No, I played it once. Thumper's like a really high intensity sort of like rhythm game. It's intense for a different reason, I think. And rather than intense of stressful, it's more intense of like overwhelmingly like noisy in a sense. Super Meat Boy, again, very sort of like concentrated burst of intensity. Post Void, I've never even heard of this game. Post Void game. I put Post Voice game. Post Void. Interesting. Aesthetic. Kind of looks like a Doom-esque sort of game. With a, I don't know, like a deep fried aesthetic is probably how I describe it. Doom. Yeah, Doom came to mind as an intense one, but I think like that's part of like Doom's entire thing, isn't it? But sort of just like going around like guts, gore, you know, monsters, explosions, that sort of thing. It's like a very densely concentrated, action-packed movie or something. As a person who likes to relax after work, this is great games for people like me to avoid. Fair enough. Dark Souls or Hollow Knight? Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, you know, Hollow Knight definitely had its very intense... Well, the thing is, Hollow Knight, I think, is one of a very intense game, which actually gets the balance really quite right. Because there's so many sort of like peaceful moments in Hollow Knight where you just sort of like take a breather. You know, the ones I think about is like in the City of Rain, I suppose, with like walking around with a fountain. When you go to the lake and you meet, I forgot his name, like Tizo, is that his name? I suppose Hollow Knight spoilers if you haven't finished it. Things like that. But there's a lot of really like quiet moments as well with Hollow Knight, as well as really intense moments. So yeah, I mean, Hollow Knight peaks pretty high, but it does have a lot of like contemplative moments. Like, that's a whole design of adventures, right? It's meant to force you to stop and to take a breather, isn't it? Splatoon 3. That's true. Splatoon games are actually very intense, surprisingly, because it's again, it kind of falls into the Overwatch category of it's literally non-stop action. The only times you have not doing something is the respawn timers. Otherwise, you got to be painted, like, because the thing is, with a lot of shooters, it's not always necessarily a non-stop, because sometimes you need to, oh, Celestial here. You need to take a break to, like, well, I mean, there's no action to be had if there's no enemies for you to be like attacking, right? But with Splatoon, like, you could always be painting something, and you also have like the quick like teleport. You can teleport next to any one of your allies, I suppose, on the map, which means you basically sort of directly get put into the action like immediately. So it is kind of like non-stop in that sense. Things just continuously go. I really actually liked Splatoon when I played it. Maybe I should have played it more, to be honest, but I feel like I'm a bit late, because isn't Splatoon 3, it's coming to the end. It's like they're having their final Splatfest or something. I'm always too late. Maybe when Splatoon 4 comes along, I'll be like, okay, now's time to get into it. It could be a great live stream game, actually, now I think about it, because I found Splatoon really fun. I played like a Splatoon 2 towards the end of its life cycle, I think, or was it Splatoon 1? And something like, it took me like 12 games to get used to the shooting technique using motion controls, but once I got used to it, I was like, it makes sense to me. I could do like sniping with it and everything. It's fantastic. Roguelikes, interesting idea. Like Hades, I can see. Curse of the Dead Gods, I can see as well, especially with its like, was it like insanity meter? I can't remember. Slay the Spire and Balatro are interesting as intense games. They're kind of, I don't know if Slay the Spire feels that intense necessarily, because I guess, but by nature of it being turn-based, sort of dampens how intense it can be. Balatro, I guess, is kind of like intense in the same way that Thumper is. It feels like an overwhelming, like, whoa, stuff is exploding and happening way, isn't it? One Step from Eden, I guess, is quite intense. It's like, it looked like a pretty interesting game. Crypto Necrodancer. Risk of Rain. That's true, Risk of Rain is quite intense as well, actually. Almost like overwhelmingly so. Project Diva? Interesting. I've never played Project Diva. I played Project Sakai, of course, but that's just like a standard rhythm game. A lot of rhythm games here. Boaz, Citus, I played. Archaea. Which one's Archaea? Like, the name's familiar to me, but I'm not sure if I've played it. No, I've not played Archaea. I played Boaz and Citus. Amnesia. Yeah, and I think I mentioned Amnesia. No, I said Outlast. No, same vein as Amnesia. Except I couldn't remember what the enemy in Amnesia's called, to be honest. Games that are overwhelming. Games when the game is too intense to sit normally. Games that are too low intensity. Let's see the opposite. Casual low intensity games. Actually, that's a fair point. Most sort of simulator games are sort of like low intensity, especially if they're games which don't have like a win condition, right? Dwarf Romantic. I've never even heard of this. Dwarf Romantic. A tile placing game. Oh, I've seen this. Dwarf Romantic, not Dwarf Romantic. David Diver. I thought David Diver has his like intense moments when it's fishing as well. Persona games? On easy mode. Okay, I see. Mass Effect Hades? This person's crazy of low intensity games. Dinkum. It's Animal Crossing but set in Australia. I don't know if I even recognise this game. Ah, Porsche, hello. What's epic? Keep our roll. What would I mean, Animal Crossing feels like one of the lowest intensity games there is, to be honest. I mean, I found puzzle games quite relaxing, I suppose. I'm not sure if I'd say Talos Principle is necessarily all that relaxing. Like Snakebird Primer is probably a good one, because I think its puzzles are very simple and it's got like a cutesy, casual design, right? Low intensity, relaxing game. Euro Truck Simulator, that's true. Not really my sort of game. That's probably too low intensity. Animal Crossing, yeah. It's 9 years ago. Wow. Let's see. Movies that are too intense for too long. Reddit. Movie stuff is too long. What's the most stressful and intensive movies? Uncut Gems? Dust Boot? Whiplash? Oh yeah, Whiplash I always hear about. Free Solo. That's an interesting one. Buried. 7. I haven't seen any of these, so I can't really say. What was that really like about Something Reindeer? That Netflix series recently. I've heard so much about it and people are just like, oh my god, it's so disturbing. Baby Reindeer, that's it. I don't even really know what it's about, to be honest. Should I watch it? Maybe? I don't know. I don't tend to watch anything, but on that note, I don't know. High intensity, low intensity, you got to find a balance. Hollow Knight's actually a really good one of a game, in my opinion, which I think gets a balance pretty good. Of course, it kind of depends on each person of like what their threshold is and what they find intense and what they don't, so it might not always work out for you. But I'm going to round this episode up here, so if you haven't watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.